So in this occasion, I want to answer the tag question from Sandbox VR, and it is about how we apply DevOps and SRE, Site Reliability Engineering, principles in Sandbox VR context, which is a company that both tech company as well as retail company. So first of all, we don't want to apply DevOps or SRE as its own sake. We want to apply both principle because we believe that it is very useful for our context, for our problem, right? And go back to our problem about Sandbox VR, why it is very interesting to apply these two principle to day-to-day operation of the business. So first of all, let me go back to the basic principle of DevOps and SRE. So DevOps is a term that coined by Gene Kim, and it is in the book of, if I'm not mistaken, it is about Phoenix Project. And the idea is how we leverage what other people already learned for years, for decades in manufacturing industry, which already mature at this time, and how we learn from them. So turns out it boils down to at least two components. One is how to make a pipeline of your business process, or in a tech company is in your product development process, or in your day-to-day business operation, right? And the second one is how you measure things. So you have a lot of so you have a pipeline which consists of a lot of subsystem like stage, and then in each stage you collect data which can help you to better understand what is your operation doing and what you can do to improve the operation in day-to-day business, right? And let's go back. So the idea of creating a pipeline is how we boils down, or we decompose our problem into several stages, right? And for example, in traditional internet companies, it can be they have a product which is a website that exposed to users, and then they develop software, and then the way they create a pipeline is first they build something called CI, which is continuous integration. So what is CI? CI is basically if you have developers building code, creating software with code, and then they want to make sure that the code is tested, both unit tested and integration tested, and then create an artifact, which can be a Docker or container artifact, or it can be a simply a tar archive, right? And that's one pipeline. So the way they did that is once they are creating code, they push to the remote repository, and then voila, they get a feedback. Oh, my code is red. It means there is something error in my code, or I forgot to retest my code in local, and then they do it. And then after that, they move to the second stage, which basically is staging, where it is some kind of test environment where you test the artifact that produced by previous stage by QA or product managers, and then after that, after you pass the staging stage, you move all the deliverable to staging, which is the tested artifacts, into the usually it's canary deployment. Canary deployment is where you expose your new code into certain amount of traffic. So for example, 5%, 10%, whatever you want. In a mobile apps, it can be a beta user. So there's a beta program usually in a mobile apps company, and then you got a certain percentage and you get feedback. And then after that, if you already okay with the feedback, you can either like go backward and then repeat the process, or you go forward and then you deploy to production. You release new version to the customer, right? And if you see what I'm talking about in the previous minutes, it boils down to if you have a pipeline, you can get an immediate feedback. So we as an engineer usually love to get an immediate feedback. You want to type something, and then we want to get the result immediately. Like a lot of engineers do that, right? From front end engineers, when they do styling, they want to have like side by side code and live preview because they want to get an immediate feedback. As an engineer myself, as a backend engineer, I want to get my code in the right, and then my result on the other side. For example, I run the test and then I see, oh, this is cool, this is green. So that's how I get a constant feedback. And DevOps is about how you can, like in a bigger scale, get a constant feedback, right? That's how DevOps come into play. That's all about the pipeline. And the second one is how you measure things. Okay, so you have already all the pipeline, and then what happens if you have a pipeline but you don't have any metrics, anything to measure, and you're just wasting your time, right? So the second part, which is equally important, is building measurement for your pipeline. So for example, in a CI, usually there is a test coverage, there is how long it takes to deploy, and some other stuff there. And then in staging, you can see how many errors we got, how many how many code or bugs we found in staging, and then once you deploy it to canary, you can find how many percent of error we get. So for example, developers can emit an error if there is any exception. So we can count how many exception per request. So for example, if there's 1,000 of requests, but there is 10%, so there is only 1% of the error, right? So we can put a threshold. Okay, if my apps doesn't give me an error like above 5%, I'm cool. And then in production, after you ship to production, you also want to get a measurement, right? You can have error tracking. You measure how many error you got, and you can have some infrastructure level metrics like the disk usage, performance, and stuff. And you can also get the business metrics. So for example, how many people book our site today? How many API call our third party aggregator call to us, and then that sort of things. So the idea is like by having a measurement, you can get immediate feedback, and when there is something bad happens, you can immediately like rolling back to previous version if the new release is the problem, or you can create a like proper release next day, right? And that's about DevOps. And about SRE is a discipline where you make sure that your system is reliable. You will agree to some kind of SLA, SLO, and then combining DevOps and SRE is like it's like, what is it? The tools that we can really leverage to operate like technology business nowadays. And basically, I forgot to mention this. So basically, SRE is some kind of DevOps implementation that started by Google, and the Google have different kind of, the way to do things by DevOps, because they have already like a big scale, and then in that scale, you don't want to mess up your system, and then basically SRE is a combination between engineering discipline as well and ops discipline, and it is a bit different, but the core principle is still two things: how you make your system reliable by giving a budget for you to do experiment like deploying new stuff. That's our SRE. And the second is building a pipeline, and the third is how you create a measurement for your all your pipeline, right? So now in the context of retail, so how we leverage DevOps and SRE in retail, like in Sandbox. So retail is unique because retail is distributed. because in Sandbox, for example, you have a lot of stores in different parts of the world. For example, Sandbox VR HQ is Hong Kong, but now I'm in Indonesia. I have Sandbox VR store nearby, and the way you uh, implement DevOps or SRE in this context is the same, but it is different in implementation detail. So, for example, first uh, in the creating a pipeline, so you need to think about what is your pipeline in detail. So, for example, start from the development side. There is a game developer, and then there is like a sort of engineer there. They develop software and as well as a game app, and then after that, they need to what is it, agree upon some kind of standard for developing software. So, for example, for the software developer, software engineer, they can have a unit testing, integration testing, and then code quality tasks by using static analysis and stuff. And then they have code review. That's one stage for the software development. For the game development, I'm not really deep in game development, but I believe they have some sort of similar, what is it? They have a similar principle like in software engineering, but I believe there's something specific to game development that I don't know. But the idea is they have the deliverable artifact and for example, an app, for example, Unity app in Windows, and then the other one, software developer has a app which are the artifact is, for example, it can be a Docker container, it can be a Windows apps, it can be anything, and then they ship the code to the CI/CD, and then they pass the CI, they deploy it to staging by the CD, continuous deployment, and then the QA and the product manager doing the testing. And then here's the tricky part. So when they deployed to certain amount of people, it's different, right? So in typical internet application, you can have a canary deployment where you ingest some percentage of traffic to the canary nodes. But in this context, because you only have so your playground or your production is not entirely the web, but you have a lot of stores. So the way I approach this is you can have some percentage of the store to have some kind of beta features. It can be per store or it can be per user. So if users want to like there's a checklist or consent button in when they register, do you want to start our beta testing? If yes, you can give them a, what is it, some kind of reward, and then you can run the test on that specific people. But it depends on the use case and it depends on the how it's difficult to implement that. But for example, in this explanation, I want to take you can take several store as a beta tester, and then you can ship to them and then see what happens in the next few days. And then if there is no errors or there is like some metrics that increase or you expect it, you can ship it to production and ship it to the whole stores in the company. And that's how you deploy. So it is basically still the same, but how you make sure that the pipeline is really detailed from the development until your product, your game experience with the VR receive to the end user in the room with the VR headset, what really happens. So you need to be careful about that. So now it is interesting. So in the operation of day-to-day business of the software, because it's in the store, because it's in the retail store, there's a lot of local activity in the store. So I already read assignment. So the first assignment was I want to design a way to measure lag, and then you describe about your architecture. There is backpack PC, experience PC, server PC and stuff, and you have a lot of local computer there. So the trickiest part in implementation detail, how you make sure that all your all your data, all your log, all your metrics that coming from the local experience on your store, coming to the centralized experience where you can see 360-degree view of your system and how your customer experience your software, right? And that's the trickiest part, how you make sure that uh, how you make sure your log system are replicated and eventually consistent in the centralized log system, and how you make sure your metrics doing the same as well, and then after that how you build a monitoring system that helps the retail staff to know that, oh, there is some kind of error here, what I need to do. So you need to design your software to be easy to operate even to only like non-experienced a non-technical person in the store, right? Yeah, in the store. And then and you need to make sure that in the HQ, for example, you have a 360-degree view, and then from that you can take what is it take decision whether your product is good or not. If not, what you need to improve, because you have already have all the data. You can just 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 adjust, and then you can just take action and then see in the following days, because you have all the pipeline from development, staging, QA, and then beta testing until the production, and each step you have an initial feedback. If you step from here to here and then fails, go here. If there's here, oh, okay, and this is okay, and there is some problem, go here and then start again. And then that's individual cycle over there is the one that makes you different with your competitor, because DevOps help you to get immediate feedback, to adjust with what's happening in your customer. And I want to describe about more about the how I design the log system and monitoring system later in the next question. So thank you for listening.